Anyway, yeah, that sounds nice. Let's do that. That's good.
So it fractured like the mold of what of life as it was told to me, which then posed an endless amount of questions that I think I'll be dead before I answer even a few of them.
Right. So what's one of them?
What is this? I mean, I don't have an answer.
Right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Instrumental Breakthroughs, psychedelic origin stories of your favorite rock and roll superheroes. I'm going to be your host. I'm Daniel. This is a project of Tam Integration. Tam Integration offers psychedelic integration and preparation coaching in the Bay Area and all around the world. In our project today, we're going to kind of take a look at how psychedelics have inspired creatives, right? That's sort of the theme of the event. And I'm really happy to introduce our first guest of the first show, my old pal Gill, who we were just talking about. We met when we were about 19 years old. We were hanging around at the University of Oregon. We lived in Eugene, which was a great time this was back in the 90s. This was like the Clinton years. This was a pre-9/11 world. If you can imagine such a thing. And it was also sort of before, well, yeah. Anyway, when I first met Gill, I believe you were just sort of playing music at the Campbell Club. You're just sort of sitting on a couch playing just about any song that anybody could call. Somebody would be able to call out a song and you would play it. And, throughout the years there, Gill always had his guitar. We would go on road trips and we wouldn't even play the radio. Gill would sit in the back and play Woody Guthrie half the way there. And it was pleasant. And you remember that?
I remember now, but I haven't thought about that in years. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah. And there was also the time, you would play at the parties at Bob Snodgrass's, which you don't remember. And then I didn't see you for a bunch of years. And then you came through town with Nick, and I saw you at the Fire. And then the next time you came through town, you were playing with Old Crow Medicine Show. And you were playing the World Cafe Live, which is a big step up from the Fire.
That was in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, in Philly.
In Philadelphia. Yeah, that's right.
In Philly. And, it's been, it's always been inspiring to watch you. It's sort of, I really have always gotten the sense of your authenticity and integrity. I mean, you're a tad cranky, but I mean, I think sometimes authenticity and integrity come with a little bit of cranky in the world that we're living in now. And so here we are today. You're playing basically every night now in lockdown. You're singing for your supper on Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah, I really enjoy it.
And I'm happy to have you. Welcome.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me. Good to see you, man.
So, in keeping with the theme of the show, it's like, I'm curious if you would like to share, how sacred plant medicine and whatnot has inspired your musical career and the path that you're on.
Well, I don't know. Do you consider this is about psychedelics? Yeah.
We round everything up to plant medicine.
LSD, you just call it plant medicine?
Yeah.
Even if it came out of laboratory? Okay, all right. Well, how it inspired my music would be almost impossible to separate from how it inspired like my life. So it would definitely inspire my music, but not specifically as much as how it changed me as a person. And that's what, so whatever I've done since my experiences with it and my growth over the years through it, it's influenced everything, everything.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I wouldn't have a specific on like how it necessarily, or I mean, the way that it's, I mean, one specific would be like, if you sit down and you play on some kind of psychedelic, you definitely play differently than you do if you sit down sober. And it's more exploratory in that way. And I feel like, I guess it's the same for life, really, isn't it?
Right. So do you want to tell us about a time that it changed? If we're not going to hone right in on music, do you want to give us a time that it maybe changed your life? Just casually.
Oh, like,
Casual
yeah, I mean,
life-altering situation?
Yeah, well, the first time would be the big one where it's sort of, it just like sort of, you know, you grow up in America, parents are good people, but regular mainstream folks, you know, taught all the rules, yada, yada. And then it just comes along and just puts a big crack in it. And then sort of like that Leonard Cohen line where the light comes in through the crack and all that. And then it fractured like the mold of what of life as it was told to me, which then, you know, posed an endless amount of questions that I think I'll be dead before I answer even a few of them.
Right. So what's one of them?
What is this? I mean, I don't have an answer.
Right.
Like, what are we doing? You go down the line, you know. I mean, it's sort of basically like it, I guess. I mean, they call it. I mean, it could be called philosophy of sorts, but not so much that. But besides just that, just you know, it really connected me with nature in a way that I had never been like truly connected. Like as a kid, we like killed things for no reason, you know. We were like, you know, just, I mean, not because we were particularly evil or anything, just not connected, you know what I mean? Like didn't see the shared experience with every other living thing around us. And that brought that into pretty clear view pretty quickly. And then and almost all the times as a kid, I mean, I only tripped maybe a couple of times in a town. I mean, most all of it was nature based, you know. I mean, it was all about connecting with nature. So it's sort of like a religious type, fuck religion, but you know, like a
Spiritual, spiritual
practice. Yeah. I mean, we need, you know. It's too bad all these words are so abused, but yeah, it's
right. Well, what would be a good word? What would be if we were going to create a new word for, you know, hippies getting high in the woods as a religious spiritual experience? What do we call that?
I don't know. Maybe don't call it anything, you know. I mean, everything that's called anything eventually gets abused. You know what I mean?
Well, how do you invite somebody to it if you don't have anything to call it?
That's a great question. I don't know. I like to. I mean, I don't know. How do you do that? Next question.
We
should move on from that. I don't think we're going to get anywhere.
Right. Yeah. Is there any time that you had an experience that needed to be worked out and you've done it with music? Has there been any time that you've gone deep and it's gotten confusing or weird or strange? Oh, yeah. We're like, oh, that needs a song.
Yeah. Mostly heartbreak. That's why my songs are kind of, or a lot of them are deal in that, you know, like, and I don't know how purely they do it, but I try, you know, like, and so it's usually, it's a part confessional, part just sort of just exploring what it means in writing. And I mean, usually I mostly write when so if we're not talking, I've started to really think these days music and lyrics they're not the same thing. I mean, they're just not. I mean, they tied, my point being, like, I was such a lyrics guy that I often like didn't focus so much on the music. I didn't give it its the reverence that I feel like I should have when I was more just like writing rhyme, you know, really into all of that. And that was also a way of like just working out thoughts and feelings and really having to distill it down to like rhyming couplets really makes you think quite deeply about it and how you're where you're going. You have to distill the idea, so you have to really think it through, and that was a pleasure. And then as far as music, which is, there is no message, it's just nice, it's wonderful, you know, all the things the music is. That's been like, for instance, this time, so I've been sitting here in this friend's place I'm like stranded perfectly in. And nightly, like you say, I've been playing music into my phone, which I never thought I would do. It felt really weird the first time, but now it's like, whatever. It's like actually quite nice. Seems to be helping some people, and it's actually helping me. Because I'm getting to points where I'm like, okay, I just put it in an open tuning, and I start working through different blues patterns and just everything that I ever knew, and some things that I don't know, and really opening it up. And it feels fucking good. It just feels good, and it's really and without a message. There's no message. It's just feeling and just being and presence, and with the instrument as much as I'm capable, and that's been good. So there's sort of two things. Does that make sense? Am I still on point?
Well, it makes sense. Well, I'm really interested in what you feel like is being communicated through this kind of free musical expression.
Presence, I would hope. I mean, like for me, that's all it is. For me, when I'm sitting and playing, when it's like, oh yes, that feels really good, it's because I'm not ahead of myself. I'm not thinking about what the next note is. I'm not worrying about how I'm appearing, or I don't care if I fuck up. I don't. I'm just sitting there, you know, with my instrument that I've known almost my whole life, and just enjoying its company. And I mean, I do that anyway. So I'm talking about, I don't actually have been playing this, like, I don't say as much as I have lately. Like this has changed things. Obviously this has changed everything in a lot of ways, what's going on with this pandemic thing. But like generally I'm like, I've been bogged down with, I don't know, everything else, you know, like booking shows, like worrying about, merch, the rent, you know, everything was like, I was caught up in a bunch of just the whirlwind. And so during this period of time, I've become reacquainted with an old friend. It's been pretty nice. And what it does is just, it's a beautiful way of expressing yourself. And I don't know, man. It's a lot of stuff, I guess.
I
don't really think about it.
Well, I hear all the time from artists that they, you know, in the world we live in today, everybody has to be their own booking manager and merch guy and marketer and all of those sorts of things. And what I'm hearing is that you're getting this respite where you basically, it's you and the guitar and the phone, and you don't have to worry about anything else.
Yeah, I don't have to worry about it. It's pretty great. Like I mean, for me, like obviously it's a weird, I mean, I love people. I love like playing the rooms of people. I enjoy live performance and things like that. But this, the joy of this has been like, yeah, I can perform still. And what it's sort of done, or here's the thing, what I'm doing here into my phone, which was just a thing, because I heard about 3 weeks ago or a month ago, I forget when now, I'm losing track of time, but they said they're basically, my booking agent in England said, we're looking, I was supposed to be going back late May. So at the end of this month, we were planning to book Germany and Scandinavia and all these things. And he's like, no, everything's off until like, we can start looking at spring of next year. And I was like, holy fucking shit. I was like, oh my God, I'm like, that's so fun. And then I start reading articles where that's even like a conservative, or that's like, it might be the end of next year before they actually start opening clubs. A lot of the clubs that I might play might shut down, which limits the number of them. And then those rooms that are left are packed. Anyway, we don't know what we're coming into. So I was like, well, I knew a guy. I saw this guy. He's a San Francisco guy, Bay Area guy, Craig Ventresco. He's a ragtime guitar player, really great guitar player. And I saw him like basically busking on Facebook. And I was like, that guy is like, you know, he's like one of those like 78 guys who has like an old crank Edison bell horn. Like, I mean, he's so not a tech guy. And then there he is like playing into it for, because he lost his gigs. And so I was like, oh, well, I'll try it. And I guess here's my main point that I'm long-winded getting to, but I would never do what I'm doing on a stage. And that's what's been really fun. So it's been totally freeing in that, I mean, it's like, you know, because it's, the risk is small. Like people can watch or they can not watch. There's no ticket admission. I didn't travel 1,000 miles to get there to like put on this show. You know what I mean? I can just sit and play music. And I feel like that this, what I've been experiencing through this is going to carry into the rest of my life, because it's much more enjoyable than the way I've been going about it. So I've sort of learned quite a bit in the last month.
Right. That's my question, is what I think you're saying is that a lot of the expectations you put on yourself about how a show is supposed to go was maybe arbitrary.
Yeah. It's like strangling, really. Like, and there's going to be a rebirth or retooling of what that whole scene has been. And it's probably in a lot of ways, understandingly, like the way I'm seeing it now, what's been holding back certain aspects of so many parts of like just my life as I've been going about it, you know?
Mm-hmm. Will you say more about that?
Well, it's back to that sort of like cracking the mold thing where like I'm looking at it through a specific structure. So if I go, all right, so I start playing on the street and I work my way, and then I'm like, oh, we want to play gigs. And then we put gigs, and then I join Old Crow, and then they're like this whole institution, and then I leave them, or they become an institution. And then through them living in Nashville, I saw all these managers, booking agents, all these different characters that everybody has their idea of what's going on. There is a structure, but fundamentally nobody has any idea what's going on, because the world has been changing so much in the last decade. So anyway, but all of those ideas like start to, or this is what it is. This is how you make a living playing, yada, yada, yada. I come out of that. I come into like my own, again, with some albums over these last 5 years, with a structured view from the past. I mean, and maybe I didn't try and tailor it to me. I sort of went with the knowledge I had from the people who I thought were experts, or you'd ask anybody who was successful. It doesn't mean that it's obviously going to apply from one to the next. Same with like just living in the world, yada, yada. So sort of there's, so this has been sort of fractured, you know what I mean? Like mm-hmm. that, and mainly that I need to, I mean, really, like hell or high water, like this should be an exercise in, I mean, love is such, I mean, the word anyway, but like, just in being there and in really like, you know, it should be a very living thing, you know, and if you win or if you don't win, it shouldn't matter. And I think I was a little too hung up on like that. Well, I want to make it work. I want to make it work. Like mainly like, which that whole drive was fundamentally, I don't want to pick up another shovel and start digging ditches for a living. You know what I mean? Like, or it was just like working class fears of like not wanting to be doing all the horrible shit before I figured out how to make this work for me, you know? And so, which became a bit of a prison that I feel like that I'm not interested in that prison, especially since I made it. What the fuck? It's crazy.
Right. It's the amount of prison you'll create to avoid being in a different prison.
Exactly. That's very well put. Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me of, you know, the quote from the Bhagavad Gita where they say it's better to do your own dharma imperfectly than to do somebody else's perfectly. You know, you sort of get all hung up in how other musicians.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, I do. Never read the Bhagavad Gita, but I get that line. That makes sense. Yeah.
It's a decent read.
I've heard of it. I've owned it, but I'm lazy.
Right. Well, the thing about it is that there's like a lot of bad translations of it out there.
That's fair. That's probably one that I have. Got it from some like charity box in front of somebody's house in Eugene or something.
Yeah, that one that one's hard to read unless you want to be in their cult. Right? Like it's a recruiting tool for a lot of various different cults, and they have it translated in a particular way to indoctrinate you the way they want you to think. And then there's some that are, you know, more chill.
It's like that's religions for you. Yeah, I feel you.
Yeah, that's the tricky thing about religions, which brings us back to going into nature.
I like just I've come to think, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's back to I mean, the thing that psychedelics also have done for me. I firmly believe that there's not there has never been a soul alive that knows what the fuck is going on. Like, I mean, we know there's the natural laws of things. We know things, but like ultimately, nobody has a fucking idea. Nobody.
Right. So based on the understanding that we don't know what's going on,
yeah.
What's the best way to approach it? Life. What's the best way to approach life based on we don't know what's happening?
Surrender is pretty good. I mean, that's been like my biggest thing is like, I mean, and you know, I mean, if anybody did know what's going on, I have leaned. All right, what I love about, like, say the Tao philosophy and Buddhism as a philosophy is mainly that it is a philosophy over a religion fundamentally, or it's supposed to be. And so it's I like it's so that I would say, yeah, the beauty is in like as much as can. I mean, certainly like the more, I mean, the problem with the word surrender is it sounds like there's defeat, you know, or that's the general, I guess, Western view would mean that you've been defeated, which I do not agree. That's not, they don't have to be together. And surrendering being like, you know, there's the guy like in the storm with the boat, like holding the rudder, and he's like, oh my God, I'm gonna die. And then there's the guy holding it with one hand, like free, being like, whoa, you know, like, and I've noticed two different types of characters, and I gotta say, I like the guy who's like, fuck yeah, and rolling, you know what I mean? And he's also more loose, he's less rigid. Sort of just making up an example here. I don't know if you follow me? Like,
oh yeah.
I just say, out of 10, that not only is that guy going to probably come out of it, but he fucking enjoyed the ride, you know.
Right.
And the other guy was just a miserable bastard till he drowned, you know. And we're all
right, because ultimately we're all drowning.
Exactly. Well,
I mean, we're all setting out. Birth is just setting out on a ship that's eventually going to sink.
This all goes away. Yeah. All of it. I mean, it goes away. It's going away right now, all the time. It's like gone. And you can choose how you view. I mean, so and I think a lot of contemporary views. I mean, contemporary is like fucking centuries now. I think it's horrible. You know what I mean? But I disagree. And I mean, because it all goes away is why it's better to be here, you know, and be aware and really be here, you know, and like and fucking enjoy it, you know, as much as you can, you know. I mean, it's gonna have its like, and I mean, and I do fully agree. I mean, I feel like I've come to a much better understanding. So to say, when something really bad happens, and I'll weep and like I'll feel horrible, but I have a fundamental understanding that that horrible feeling that I'm having is because of all of the good that I have known and because of how much I care. And right. I will also know that if I live through this, which I have so far, all of them, the joy and appreciation for everything that I will feel on the other side is going to be even greater than it was coming into this said tragedy, you know?
Right.
So.
Well, I think that really comes through in your music. Like one of the words that I think comes to me when I think of your music is poignant. Right? There's a real embracing of difficulty, of things like heartbreak and loss, and kind of the willingness to wrestle. And so it's interesting because we're talking about surrender, but there's like some sort of a willingness to have like a sweet wrestling and struggle, you know, that is deeply present to the situation, kind of recognizing that, you know, sometimes surrender requires us to feel things fully.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that stuff has been yeah, increasingly that's what I'm writing about. I mean, and I'll be, and I mean, on the last album or like as I'm moving, I'm understanding, hopefully, how to write better, but how to use, getting better with like, figuring out how to express myself through not coding so that it's like not able to be understood, but like using different personifications to sort of like try and unlock. I mean, the beauty of poetry is like, I've always thought that like, and I mean, that's what I like to, I wouldn't call myself a poet at all, but like, that's what I think of in the writing of songs. I mean, it's lyrical, it's, the rhymes and all that. But, and the purpose of the reason that I think it's valuable is because some things just cannot be like, coldly stated, what I mean? Like you can't come at them directly, you need to come at it from an angle, what I mean? Like love requires poetry because you can't say, I mean, tell me what is love? Get the fuck out of town, what I mean? You can go all day long and I can find somebody to tell you you're wrong, what I mean? Like, so finding ways to just be like, bling, and then like, just you find a way of like puzzling together words where it takes some slight corners, it's doing like, and then it's like king, and then like, and maybe it poses like just another question, really, but it opens up a bit of, do I sound insane?
No, you sound great. You're making perfect sense. It's very poetic. So my two questions are, I have two of them. You can answer whichever one you want. The first one is, what would it take? You said I would never call myself a poet. What would have to be different about you for you to call yourself a poet? Where's the space there is question one. And two, is it, how do you then relate that back to what we were saying about, we don't know what to call a psychedelic ceremony in the woods?
Let me think about this. Well, as far as calling yourself a poet, what I think of is what I forget. I think my friend Lucy, I like going to France. I've been quite a number of times. And what I loved about France was mostly historic. I mean, I love a lot about what's the living life of France and how just, there's a lot of it that's more human than it is here in a lot of ways, for my taste. But they also had a lot of great writers, a lot of great painters, I mean? They weren't all necessarily from there, but they were based there. Anyway, her point when I was over there, she goes, yeah, America's funny. She goes, because everybody's an artist. And I don't know if this is even true what she said, but she was like, the thing is, she goes, here, like, you don't, like, she goes, people, they would laugh at you if you call yourself, you're like, oh, I'm an artist, you know what I mean? Like, because we've had so many great art, like, you have to be, like, other people can call you an artist, but you just calling yourself self-described, and that's kind of an American thing, we're really good at selling shit, and I mean, we fucking have to, I mean, we're left to our own devices entirely, I mean, we, like, mom and dad fucked off a long time ago. It's like, good luck, bastards. But yeah, so I don't think I'll ever call myself that because I don't, because still, I mean, there's no way. I don't know how. And maybe that exactly ties into it. You know what I mean? For me, with the religion thing is like, it's sort of the way that, like, I don't know, anytime anything good is figured out, there's some asshole's going to figure out how to make a buck off of it, and he's going to twist it into something. I mean, it's just. I mean, look at everything, really. I mean, like, so eventually. So I don't know that there is a word. I mean, we could invent it, and it would last for a little while. You know what I mean? And then somebody else would have their handcrafted artisan version of like whatever the fuck, and they'd have the whole look. They'd have the garb down to a T. What I mean? Everything's and. Everybody be like, oh my God. And they'd have all the language. They'd have all that, they'd make it as non-specific as possible so that it was like, you know what I'm talking about. Now
what you're talking about, and the thing is that the artisans are really the least of our worries. Because when I think about an artisan, like, there's another squirrel trying to get a nut. But then we start to see what's happening in the psychedelic community right now, that it's getting pushed through FDA approval, and there are these studies that it's therapeutic. Pharmaceutical entrepreneurs are entering. So like the big money people who ruined cannabis are moving in.
Oh no, that's what I mean. But what I mean is they wear the cloak of like artisan. You know what I mean?
Right. Okay.
It's
Got
like,
it.
you know, like Budweiser started putting artisan on like certain brands of beer that they bought. You know what I mean? And you're like, oh, I'm buying this nice microbrew. Bullshit. Fucking Budweiser bought it ages ago, and like the quality's actually down. But it's just amount, you know, whatever. You know, it's like it's just really
Right.
just yeah. But I feel what you're saying. I know what you mean. Yeah, I'm not talking about true artisan. Which I mean, it's hard. The thing is the water is so fucking muddy with everything right now. Like almost nothing feels. I don't. There's little, certainly in the realm of culture, here that I trust. Like without. I mean, that I just trust. Like I don't. If there's little. There's not a lot.
Right.
And I'm okay with that. Doesn't matter. It's not. I don't think that's really that important.
It reminds me of that European joke. A European told me, you know, he was like, what's the difference between America and a yogurt?
Yogurt culture.
If you leave yogurt alone for 200 years, it develops a culture.
Oh, yeah.
Which brings us back to the idea, and what you're saying, right, is what Terence McKenna says, is that culture's not your friend.
Not here.
Not here.
No.
And then it becomes.
I mean, maybe I haven't thought it through that much. I mean, I just know here, culture is. I mean, I've wondered often, like, what is our culture? I mean, is it pop culture? Like, is it just Pepsi and like Lady Gaga and like fireworks and football players? And is that's our you know, and like selling shit? You know what I mean? Which all of that stuff is really selling shit. I don't find a lot of soul food in any of it. You know what I mean? Like in any of it. You know, I mean, of the wide mainstream culture, and then there's all the, well, of course, the term subculture. You know what I mean? And then all those. But any culture, I'd say the reason it's not your friend is because it eventually built some kind of hierarchy, or it certainly strives to. You know what I mean? So I think a club would have me as a member or something. I don't want to be a part of any club that has me as a member. But
right. Well, where does that leave you in terms of how you create as someone who's contributing to culture? You know, hopefully in a significant way. Where does that put you?
Just put me?
Yeah. You know, you're a culture. You're part of the culture.
People up on the outskirts of a national park in a friend's house who's been kind enough to put me up while the world's freaking out. You know, I mean, it just puts me. It doesn't. I don't really care actually anymore. I mean, I think I can really say that. Like, I couldn't really say that before, but I really don't care anymore. Like, and I don't mean I don't care about people, but I don't really care anymore about. I'm not trying. I don't want to try. I'm not. How do I put it? I don't have any great ambitions to like try and fix anything or you know, like I want to keep the integrity that you're talking about. Like, I want to be pure in what I'm doing. I want it to be, so I care about all of that, but like, and I want to live that and do that every day and make, and I will continue to like work and all of that. But as far as like trying to inject it into anything, or, you know, I mean, do you know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying. You know, this was kind of funny. I made this is roundabout. Give me a second. I made a video on Instagram a month or two ago about smoothies, making fresh almond milk and making smoothies, because, you know, I'm very much into, because I was doing it a lot. You know, I was making my own almond milk and I was making smoothies, and it was kind of important to me and nourishing and felt good and wholesome. And, you know, when we're talking about these sort of self-led psychedelic ceremonies, you know, they don't have a shaman and they don't have a therapist. It's just, you know, us and our friends, and we're doing the best we can. And so I suggested, it's like, okay, well, like, next time you get high with your friends, make yourself a fresh smoothie. You know, it'll be delightful. And somebody reached out to me and they said, don't you worry that you're scaring the mainstream people away. because, you know, you guys out there in California might understand that smoothies are cool, but somebody from the Midwest might be turned off by it. And
They might be turned up by smoothies.
they're turned off by the mention of smoothies, that it's like too hippy dippy to tell people to like eat mushrooms and make a smoothie.
Yeah, well, that's a delicate. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, but there's so much language like that that's like that. I mean, especially now, I was thinking about this a lot this week because I keep seeing words where I'm like, wow, yeah, if you word it this way. Like, for instance, I mean, a great example for me is like Bernie Sanders. Like, he overestimated the intelligence of the country by calling himself a democratic socialist. Like,
yes.
You just totally fucked yourself because I know nobody is going to do the homework. You know what I mean? They're going to hear one word and you're out. You know what I mean? Like, he's a fucking communist. And it's like, wow, that's not even the word he used. Okay. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I have that argument. We don't need to get political here, but it's interesting with people that, and this goes back to language, and this is why, well, this ties right into what you were just asking about. What do we call it? Yeah. I mean, it's almost, I don't know. I mean, the real question, I think, is like,
well, what I'm getting at, think about that for a second. What I'm getting at is that, like, I'm actually have become good friends with this guy. He's a great guy. But, you know, I had to maintain that, like, this is the tone I'm holding. Like, I'm not going to be, like, Gwyneth Paltrow has Netflix specials about psychedelics. Forbes magazine has articles about psychedelics almost weekly. You know, it's like, I'm just over here, like, talking about, like, how can we can be with our friends in a natural way. And if you like it, I'll be here. And if you want something else, by all means, go get something else.
My God, thank you. Yeah, yes, I agree. That is basically the way I'm approaching music. Same vibe. Yeah, and the way that I feel is like, you know, they say, like, if you just, you know, I mean, I do believe this stuff. Like they say, you know, you don't have to, like, you know, the best you can hope for, or that I would hope for if I cared about that. I mean, but is that you move people in the right way and it ripples, you know, and like from you, and it just, and we're all, and it is all, and this is, we're only talking about humans here, you know what I mean? But we really got to sort our fucking selves out. I would like that if that was possible, but hopefully you put good shit out, and yeah, it just, you know, and you really gotta, I mean, but it's really like interpretation is a whole other thing, you know, like how somebody receives the information that you give them. Like, so, I mean, it's hard when you're talking in things that aren't like, okay, here's how you start a fire. You know, you're talking about more like, you know, philosophical points of view, or things that require a thought from the receiver. It's not, you know, it's not just like, you know, oh, here's the clunk, you know, clock, you know what I'm saying? Like you're trying to trigger an awakening, which isn't like, it's not like, you know, a Lego set, you know, it's like, it's different for everybody.
Well, and ultimately, I think the awakening we're trying to trigger is our own, right? It's like we put things out that come from the heart so that we can live with ourselves.
Yeah, because if you're not there, what can you do, like, for anyone anyway? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, I would not say that I'm there, like, not at all. I think I've had the moments where I think I'm there, and I'm proved pretty quickly that I'm not. I made a I made a post yesterday that it's not a meme. What is it? It's this picture photograph of a guy, and he's got a book, and he's sitting, and on the cover of the book it says "How to Be in the Moment," right? And then there's a book on the table in front of him. It says "How to Be in the Moment." After that, they're really thick books. But that's like that's the funny thing about like studying presence, which, I mean, it is a bit. There is something comical about the whole concept. Like, and it says a lot about humans that we would even that you know, we need to study to even to be, you know, it's just a little silly. But
there's a Ram Dass book where in it he says, you know, anytime you want, you can just put this book down and sit in pure presence.
Exactly, that's the whole vibe.
You keep reading if you want, but
Yeah, well, and that's the funny thing about it is you can intellectually understand that clearly. You can have experienced it and feel it clearly, but holding it, yeah, steadily. I do not understand why that is so difficult for us as creatures, because I get it. I feel like I truly understand it. I have definitely been where I'm like just here, and like it's like yes, but that goes away. Like all the it's like it's a constant. It's a constant process where, and sometimes, I mean, depending how lost I let myself get to how longer it takes me to get, but really the funny thing is getting back to the zero, getting back, or not zero, maybe not the right term, but like getting back to center. It's always right there.
Mm-hmm.
It can come in an absolute instant. It can also take, depending on how hung up you are. I love the term hang up, but how long you fight, it's silly. But it's a thing, and for some, I mean, like, if you've never seen, if you've never seen that particular light, poof, I feel like I've been well, we have been, obviously, I mean, like, as long as I can remember now, since I was on this particular path of self-discovery. Well, and that's, sorry, I won't digress. I really digress a lot, but
we have time for that.
Yeah, that's true. But like, I thought, like, because of how, and it's because of the company you keep, but I suffered under the illusion that everybody living was like trying to better themselves and trying to understand things, and I was sorely mistaken, like heavily fucking, and that's why I was so disappointed, especially in this. I mean, by the population at large, I've been, I don't know, I guess constantly disappointed. But I mean, why? I mean, what do I want? It's not my responsibility. But in this era that we're living in now, I'm beside myself quite often. And anyway, so I don't think that sort of draws me back to what I was saying earlier, where I don't care. It's not that I don't care. It's more that, like, but there's nothing, like, well, we already wove through this, which is basically like being here and being ourselves and tending to our own is the best we can do. I mean, it really is. I remember when I was younger, I used to think, oh, that's bullshit. I mean, that's like such a like selfish view or whatever. I totally disagree now. Like, if you're not, and what can you do outside of your immediate sphere? I mean, the one thing that I can do, the one great thing about music is I can, like, put these ideas, I can all the working on myself and try and not figure things out, but like cope with things. I can put it into song, and in this era, that can, some guy in wherever the fuck. I mean, what's been amazing with doing these shows is, like, people will write, so there's some guy in Austria that, like, has all my albums. I've never done a gig in Austria in my life, that kind of thing. So but otherwise, like, you can only do it in your living presence, and with the people that you encounter. And I mean, right now I'm encountering nobody, so it's a nice long time and I feel like without all the noise around. I mean, I just spent 2 years living in LA, and I'll tell you, I wouldn't call it a mistake, but I won't be doing it again. But I learned a lot. But
I think I was surprised to see you in LA. That was surprising to me when I heard that.
I took it as a bit of a challenge, and I would say in the end, I got lost a bit. I let it, I went in, like, not believing in the story, or, like, I didn't at all, I was like, it was a bit of a laugh, and I was like, and as soon as I started taking the game seriously at all, I started to suffer. Are we still there? Oh yeah, you probably, yeah. And anyway, and I mean, the noise is obviously deafening. I mean, it's like there's so much human action and it's so, and fun. And the other thing is I started, as long as I can remember, there's so, like, you have to be a hypocrite to survive here, because there's so many things that I detest that I have to do, and I don't. This is another whole level of things, but like you don't have to, but I wouldn't even say not even to flourish. I'd say to some degrees just to exist here because of the way that everything is set up. I have to break codes quite regularly. Anyway, in Los Angeles, there was like lots of them, and anyway, when the noise finally, now I've been sitting in the woods for almost 2 months, and holy fuck, I mean, I'm sure I'll be back to play a show or something, but I won't be living there. And I did have a lot of fun. I mean, there's a lot of action, but now that the noise is cleared, I feel,
So I'm
yeah,
hearing that
really.
there's just a shift in values. That, sometimes our values are one way, and then, that the things that seem to be important are less important, and finding that presence, that inner awakening becomes more important. And, kind of back
Yeah.
to that, you were saying that, it's easy to touch for a moment, but hard to hold on to. I'm just wondering, like, what would your music be if there wasn't that longing for connection? Like, if you were just able to stay there all the time, what would your music be like? How would it be different?
It would be all instrumentals.
Okay. How
It would
come?
just be music. Because there'd be nothing to say. Because I
Mm.
don't know that there is anything to say. Like, I mean, there is, obviously. But I mean, often, I mean, back to your, was it Ram Dass you said? I don't remember, but your name in somebody's book. But like,
Mhm.
there's a bit of a hoax always played because, like, yes, there's some insight here, but it doesn't mean it's true. You know what I mean? I mean, and just because you feel it in the way that you extrapolate it, and I mean, I can't tell you how many times I talked to somebody and what they described that they got out of a song that I wrote couldn't be further from what I was feeling or thinking or actually wrote it about. And that is sort of the beauty of it. But that's
Mhm.
also but I mean, that's, I mean, maybe I'm being a little too extreme here, but like, there's danger in language. I mean, we're using a fuck. That's all we're doing here. But I mean, what I mean is it's like how it's. I mean, like when I think, I don't know why. I don't know if this is. Let me think about this example if it's any good. But I always thought of it as quite good. This was in Eugene. This was early days, right? And like I remember, I was standing in line at a coffee shop, and there was somebody in front of me who was being irritating to me for some reason or another, being kind of like. So I forget what the scene was. I mean, there was an old man standing behind me, right? And I was like, and I turned back to him and I was like, boy, the things you have to tolerate with some people. And he looked at me and he was like, yeah, I know what you mean. But he was talking at me. You know what I mean? Like, you follow me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like the levels going back. So like whatever. So anyway, I'm being really long-winded. So instrumental. I mean, the great thing about a beautiful piece of music is you if it's just music, like when it's just music, like you're not attaching dreams or hopes to it or or anxieties or it's just music. You know what I mean? It's, I mean, depending, I guess, maybe if you're really into like instrumental death metal, it might be a different. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's a wide berth types. I
I mean,
would
I
lean
gotta,
more towards beautiful and floral guitar
mm,
playing or something.
I gotta tell you, I'm picturing when you said that, like, oh, like an overweight, gray-haired, like super judgmental old hippie. Because I'm picturing
No,
Out of the Fog on like Fifth Street, you know,
that's where it was. Yeah, it was at Out of the Fog. It was
or like
it was
11th
the one.
Street, the second Out of the Fog location.
Yeah, it was the one that was more in the middle of town,
Yeah,
not not by Genesis. I
yeah,
don't
yeah,
know
man.
why I
That was
brought
that
that up, but
was.
that's but oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna muse about like the old hippies that used to hang out there and pretend to plan the rainbow gathering and stuff like that, and just be
Well,
cranky and seem to know, and seem to just know everything. And it was yeah, it was an interesting time.
it was an interesting time. It was a yeah. I don't. I mean, it's hard to even know what a time was because it felt like a very innocent time, but that was also obviously related to age. And you know, I mean, I like, you know, I think of what George Carlin said in one of his stand-up specials, where he's basically saying, like, it's like, you know, the longer you hang around here, you realize that shit is fucked. It's like when you start looking at the playing field of the world, it's like, oh, and it has been for a while. It's not like all of a sudden, you know, the fuck faces who come into power and, oh, now we have problems. Like, fuck no, not at all. You know what I mean? It's like,
well, there was something simpler and innocent about being in a small town in the Pacific Northwest before Bush was in office, right?
Well, it was also before, you know, I mean, the internet was there, but like we weren't really using it. You had to go to we didn't have computers. You had to go to the library to check your email or whatever. You know, you didn't spend hours surfing through information. You got a book, you know, or whatever, and mostly you talked. I mean, what I remember about those days that I miss more than anything, I mean, what I miss about the coffee shop as it was, that when, I mean, which, you know, it was probably better before then, but are you still following me?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, it said it was unstable. What I missed was just the community. I mean, that's what I would say was the biggest difference of the time, was like everything was much more local. It didn't matter where you went, because we traveled a lot still back then. So when you went up to Seattle, you were in Seattle. I mean, and obviously you're in Seattle, but I mean, it was a place with a specific culture of its own that it felt, you know, whereas I don't really feel this new era, and this, I don't know if this is bad or good. This is what humans do. It's what we're doing. It's like, fine. But I found it much more interesting when you go to a party, like, for instance, like, why travel somewhere if it's just like where you fucking left, you know? I mean, maybe the river's nicer, or like you like the woods outside of town, but I mean, if they all have like vegan this XYZ coffee shop, whatever the hell, you know, all the cultural things, and everybody's kind of stressed this, you know.
Yeah.
Why travel?
I read an article once called "The Gapification of America," and this was like, it was about the Gap clothing stores, and just how like every town, you know, this was a couple of years ago when I guess Gap was bigger, you know, but there was a time when they were sort of like the stronghold of just kind of corporate clothing that was every strip mall had one, kind of thing. You know, now it's more like Starbucks. You know, Starbucks is what you're talking about, where there's not the independent coffee shop vibe, which there's still
independent coffee houses, but more to the point than that. Even despite that, is like now, I think it's changing. I don't know what the new generation of kids is going to be like at all. I don't have kids. I have no idea what's shaking, but it was mainly the computers and shit, you know, because like before we had laptops, I mean, you didn't do anything. I mean, I remember out of the fog, we'd sit on the porch with our guitars, and I remember we'd have like manual typewriters out there with Felix, and we'd be sitting and writing songs, and people would be coming through, and it was a communal, you know, little hub, you know, and then, you know, we were bums living out of cars, but you know, all the working folks would come through, but it was a community that was constantly, like, you know, intermingling and you know, in all kinds of ways, that now it's like you'll walk into a room and it's like, I don't know, you know, they turned into libraries where it's like you don't talk to, you know, or like certain people feel unapproachable. It's just a totally different feeling. It's not the same at all. Like, I mean, I met so many people at coffee shops, and I can't tell you the last person I met at a coffee shop, period. Like,
right. Yeah. Everybody's in their own portals.
A new person. What's that?
Everybody's in their own portal. Everybody's talking to somebody somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's interesting, you know, the thing about everything being the same is when I had my yoga studio, I hosted a couple of monks, these monks from northern India who were traveling, raising money to build like a temple and a hospital in this area with like nothing, like northern Assam. And they were fun, you know, they were in their 20s. I was in my 20s. They were in their 20s. We were about the same age, I guess. And they didn't know how to drive. I taught them how to drive in the same high school parking lot my dad taught me to drive in. But they liked Starbucks. Like, I tried taking them to an independent coffee shop and it confused them. You know, they were from like the middle of nowhere, and Starbucks was somehow comforting to them.
Yeah.
You know, they knew their order.
Yeah, I know some who is I was watching a friend, I won't say his name, but a friend of mine, he's an old man, and he was doing a show the other day, and yeah, and he mentioned and I was like, wow, that's so interesting. And I guess I mean, what the way that the corporate culture wins is it's the same. It's cookie cutter. So there's familiarity, and people
Right.
they feel comfortable. Like there's quote unquote quality control. I think that the quality on most of these corporate places is shit. If you've had actually good coffee, you know that Starbucks is fucking not great coffee. I mean, let me tell you. But let's go back to the '90s when driving across this country, all you had was that absolute, it was like they strained it through a sock in those shitty fucking gas stations, and there was no Denny's. You could stop into a. So I mean, I guess it's in the spectrum. There's sort of an improvement, ish, but the corporate culture. I remember because I'm from Louisiana, right? So when I was a kid, it was all, from what I remember of the town, it was like, it wasn't like a beautiful town, but like, like they'd have the aluminum siding, roller rink, it was like painted like a rainbow, or the old Cypress bait shop. And they had, all the buildings were, whoever built them, whenever they built them, and they had their own design. They sort of, to some degree, fit with the landscape. And then one day Walmart shows up on the edge of town, and then there's a Walmart on the other edge of town, like kind of like an attack from both sides. And it just slowly bled it out until, I would start going back. And now you go and it's like, might as well be fucking San Jose, but it's in a swamp-based area. So it's like, and that happening like coast to coast since the 90s, like it started, I would say probably in the 90s, I think, from what I wasn't traveling in the 80s really. But no, I did with my parents a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, the corporate takeover of certainly America, maybe the world, I don't know, I'm not a fan. It's not my favorite.
I'm not a fan.
Not a fucking fan at all. It's just, it's a homogenization of a culture that was already like,
Well, I sort of feel like, we were talking about how much we have to struggle to survive. Like, everybody has to compromise their stuff, and everybody has to really grind because we're all on our own. And so I feel like, there's maybe not bandwidth, for uniqueness, like people don't have the bandwidth to explore maybe the way they did if there was more leisure time. So that it's just like, I just need a Starbucks coffee that's going to work and taste the same way the Starbucks coffee tasted yesterday, because I just got to get on with my existence.
Well, and most people are creatures of habit. But I also think that there's been an indoctrination or like we've been like, all those companies, they spend a lot of money selling themselves, and selling like the comfort of them as as like sort of like, they're like the teat of like culture and for mainstream, and so, I feel like maybe it's partly something that also just comes down. Like we're overpopulated. Nobody. It's not like it's not talked about hardly ever, which is amazing. And it's and I don't have any solutions to it, but maybe that's just what happens when there's just so many. There's also that element where if everybody went to the cool coffee shop, well, you wouldn't be able to get through the door. Like it'd be. So they serve on that level. Although it's very interesting now. What's amazing now is like nobody's going anywhere, and so everybody's just they're drinking their coffee at home, and like it's pretty great. I have to say, like.
That was really one of my favorite things. One of my favorite things to do in the morning is walk to the coffee shop. To this day, it's probably a habit I picked up in Eugene, where I would go to yoga in the morning, and then I would go to Out of the Fog.
Yeah.
And so, to this day, I really like.
Yeah. No, go ahead. Sorry. No, I'm just thinking back to the coffee shop habit. Yeah. Continue. Sorry.
Yeah, I just mean to this day, it's my favorite thing, and I put the baby on now. Like I was so excited when Somi was pregnant. I was like, I can't wait to like put the baby in the baby carrier and walk to the coffee shop. You know, this is my
That's
mundane existence, is just, you know, getting, you know, they roast it there. It's a local place. And, you know, the barista, you know, likes to comment on how he's growing and stuff like that. And it's a cute neighborhood thing. And so I do really, really miss that. I don't even know if they're open right now.
Probably not. Yeah. I mean, I miss community in general. I think it's been a long time since, I guess I sort of had it in Nashville for a minute, which again, that was years ago. So I forget that element. Like there's not really a place that I walk into. It's been years since there was a place where I had a local anything really.
Right.
You know, certainly a local where I went in and I knew everybody's name. I mean, those were I mean, I had that though. And I like that style of life so much better. But what the early coffee shop days was, because if you remember when we met, like I was living out of my van.
The orange one with the red, white, and blue stars. What's that? It was an orange Volkswagen with red, white, and blue stars. Curtains.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's it. But that was where the coffee shop became like so important, was because we didn't have a house to hang out in. I mean, so it was either hang out in the park, the coffee shop would let you sit on the porch all day long.
Mm-hmm.
You know, spend a couple bucks, nurse your coffee while you play guitar or whatever. So it wasn't exactly like it was still an outside existence even then. So I don't know. I really don't know what's going on. Back to the beginning of this whole thing, I have no idea what's happening. For everything that I'm saying, I'm just, you know.
I did see Cafe Mom came to the Bioneers conference. Have you heard of Bioneers?
No.
It's all about regenerative culture. You know, it's all save the earth sort of stuff, divestment, and, you know, all of these forward thinking things. And there's a little, you know, area to buy your food and coffee. And it was really good to see Cafe Mom there, you know, because that was the coffee we drank, right? And I don't see that very much. And I was like, oh, you know, and I was really sad. I was like, oh, how's Tahinda? And they were like, oh, he died a couple of years ago.
Oh, he did? Yeah. Didn't know that. Yes, he did. He was old back then.
He was old back then. But I mean, he changed, speaking about changing culture, you know, it was like, that was...
Well, it's going to have to go local. I mean, like the Save the Earth thing, like the only way to do it is like in the global, sort of in globalism as much as possible, you know?
Right.
Like if the food that they're growing here on the land that I'm in is feeding the people around here, well, there you have a nourishing like vibe happening. You know what I mean? Now that can't happen everywhere. I mean, that's, for instance, like, I mean, I've been saying this for years, but I mean, it's, you know, like you look at a place like Phoenix. I mean, it can only exist because of the way that we've built. You know, one of my favorite band names was this band in New Orleans. They were called "Why Are We Building Such a Big Ship?" I just love that name. But like, you look at so many towns and it's like, oh yeah, this is like a food desert. So like, if anything stops, you know, if like, I don't know, you know, it's like simple things like we don't think we'll ever run out. Maybe we won't run out of oil until we're all dead. But like, here's the next question posed about going local is like, well, what do you do with towns like that? You know, what do you do with like cities of like 40 million? I'm glad I just have to think about writing songs. I'm just going to stick to that.
Right. Well, it reminds me of things like the biosphere experiment, which happened also in Arizona, where they built that big dome and they sort of created, you know, this
climate.
Yeah.
Right. I did see some of those Earth ships up in New Mexico.
Oh man, I love those Earth ships. I would love to live on an
great.
Earth ship.
Like it's like that's like me too. But that's like maybe, or the one that I saw, which was like a community of them. It's quite a bit of land, and it's maybe like 100 people living out there or something. You know, maybe that might even be excessive. So, but man, they are cool. They were so cool. Watching how they recycle the water, the whole. Yeah, I mean, you know, I mean, I don't know. Do you just make your own? Yeah, of course you do.
I remember looking into it. Like I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna like buy an Earth ship. I'm gonna move to the land and stuff like that. And I couldn't afford any of it, so I bought a T-shirt.
Nice.
I don't know if that's a really very good story or anything like that, but I really enjoyed my Earthship t-shirt for a little while.
Yeah, there you go, man. Yeah. No, I only went, the first time was last fall, I guess. Drove out to Denver. I was on the way, going out to Denver. And
There's a
yeah, I was
documentary you might really like called Life on the Grid, Life Off the Grid, or
okay.
Life on the Mesa. And so like out kind of near the Earthship places, there's just this land where people go to just check out. And they live in, you know, broken down airstreams, and they're like kind of these wild communities of people who maybe came back from the Iraq war and are just shell-shocked and want to be left the hell alone. And it's this documentary of how people sort of live together in the middle of nowhere, and are allowed to be themselves because they don't fit in society at all. It's really interesting.
That sounds nice. I wish there was more places like that. There's more places to go. Like, I'm currently staying at a friend's place, but I'm back to homeless. I mean, I'm not renting anywhere. I don't currently have a place. I never bought a place. And so it's amazing, like and I mean, part of this is just you grow and there's, you know, life changes so much, but I've never felt so much like I don't have anywhere to go. Like, although, I mean, here I am in a place, you know what I mean? But like, I didn't used to feel that way. Things used to feel a little more open, a little more.
Do you think that's a function of age?
Yeah, I think partly, yeah, for sure.
Because like there were places I could sleep 20 years ago that I can't sleep now.
Well, that's totally fair. Yeah, there is that element. That is, yeah, of course, right. I'm sure that there's some musty futon somewhere that's like got my name on it if I want it, and I'm not all that interested. But I mean, also just like what I think of today is like, I'm like, wow, I know so many people that have like, there's just so many people with like second homes or vacation, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
there's so many houses sitting right now in this country that are empty. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because it's just the other place that they go to.
Right.
And
or it's
I feel like back in the day, you could go to that place. Back in the day, it would be like, I remember this because I remember it'd be like, oh, your girlfriend's parents, they got the cabin out on Mount Rainier or something. So you drive out to Mount Rainier, it's their uncle's cousin or some shit, and whatever. You go out to Mount Rainier, stay in the cabin. Now it's on VRBO or Airbnb, or like, it's a whole, you know, every place is, so you can stay there if it's not already being rented, or you can rent it. Do you know what I mean? But everything has become
right
in that way too, just a bit. You know what I mean? I mean, I remember when I was going to go camping, and I was like, I forget where I pulled in, but I was like, I was somewhere up in the McKenzie River, right, in Oregon, and it was like, let me try and get the right math. I think it was like maybe between $60 and $75 for a fucking camping spot.
Right.
And I was like, you gotta be fucking stoned. Are you fucking crazy? Like, why the fuck? Why would I? That's insane. I'm like, that's like a whole other level. It's like, anyway. And as I travel, it's not, you can still find places, obviously, to just go, you know, you can camp in the national parks and whatnot, but it's like, anyway, I don't know where I'm going with this. I'm just rambling now.
Are you doing any recording?
I have stuff to do it, and I intend to this month. I'm not sure how long I'm good to stay in the place I'm at the moment. Through this month, I know, but I don't know beyond this. I don't know what goes on. Like, the long and short of, like, I'm supposed to be in England right now,
right?
And I was planning on moving to Europe this summer. Like, just going. I mean, as much as I can, like, figuring out how to stay. Like, start going through paperwork and figuring out, like, just
would you
next
stay in
adventure,
Paris?
give it No, I probably wouldn't be in a city at all. I'd probably be somewhere in the countryside. Like, I hadn't even thought that far through. I just thought I'll go over. I had the first few months already had a plan. Some friends of mine have a studio and they have some land. I was going to go write on their land, and then we were going to make a record in London.
Okay.
And then when that was over, I was maybe going to go to France where my friends, see if I could, you know, hit up my friends. But anyway, it's all over. Like none of that is happening at the moment. So, I forgot what your question was.
What was my question?
Just
Are you recording?
My recording. So yeah, so that was the plan. Was like I was going to do a bunch of preparing for that, but I maybe left my own devices here, and I do have the gear. I'm thinking of doing an album. Back to what we were talking about earlier, an album of just instrumentals, or what I was talking about, whatever, you know.
Oh, nice.
Like just been playing a lot of just open tuning guitar, and just that I think I could do that. I could record that really well from the situation I'm in at the moment, and it's also kind of what I'm feeling at the moment. So.
Right on. And so how do people watch you and stay in touch with you and support you and all that kind of stuff?
Are we talking to people that might watch this?
Yes. Yeah, we're plugging your stuff now as we sort of wind down, I think.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I can't believe that we've been talking for an hour, and it feels longer. Covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
So, oh yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like right now, for instance, I'd say go to my website, except I'm not selling anything because I'm miles from a post office. But my name is Gill Landry, GILLLANDRY. And then, yeah, just go to Instagram. I don't know all the things. I don't really know how musicians do it anymore. I mean, I do because I'm doing it, but I mean, like, you can say, oh, go stream me on Spotify, but I mean, you know, and do that. Yeah, do that. Come to a show is what I would say, but I'm not playing any.
Well,
how am I doing on
you
the
have a it's like pulling teeth with you. You have a Patreon.
Oh, I have a Patreon, yeah, which I'm behind on. I'm supposed to put that out today. Actually, 3 days ago, but yeah. Wow, I really sold that one, didn't I? Yeah, I have a Patreon.
so join Gill's Patreon if you want to wait around for whatever he posts, and then they can watch you.
I promise that I deliver.
What's that?
Oh, I promise I do deliver. I might be a little late, but I deliver every month.
And then you are performing, and people can watch you and donate to you on your Facebook page and your Instagram.
Oh yeah, I put up like the digital tip jars, like Venmo and PayPal and all that. And yeah, I'll keep doing that until shows resurface. Whenever, I don't know when that'll be. But yeah, so that's one way. That's pretty good. Buying records is always good. Bandcamp is pretty good. Bandcamp, the artist gets the money, like so. But only if you buy my most recent record, because otherwise the label gets it.
Right. Wait, something happened with you. You self-produced something and you used a service that went out of business or something?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I got royally fucked. This is, I decided my last record, I'll go into this briefly if you got a minute. So my last record, my label was not going to front me any money, and I didn't really have any money to make it myself. But I'd written all these songs when I was staying at a friend's place in France, and I was like, okay, I want to make this record. Yada yada. So somebody said, oh, you should try crowdfunding. I was like, okay. I was a little nervous about it because it felt a bit like begging. You know what I mean? I sort of felt funny enough. I felt like above it. Like, oh, I was like, like it just felt like panhandling for. But then the guy presented me this whole thing. He's like, well, here's the thing. He goes, if you go with this service, I guess they kind of all work this way. You say, when I'm done making the record, you know, if you support me, you get a copy of the record, and then you can sell all kinds of other things. So you could do I do hand typed lyrics sheets or whatever. Like I do house shows. You offer all these things. So everybody's buying something. And I was like, yeah, I'll try it. I went to this company called Pledge Music. I said, yeah, I'd like to raise $15,000 to make my record. They were like, we think you could make 30, right? Turns out I made 35, right? And then they went out of business. They were insolvent. They were already insolvent when I signed up. They already knew they couldn't pay their bills. They were like robbing Peter to pay Paul. So not robbing, you know what I mean? They were like, it became a Ponzi scheme of sorts because they'd lost. They'd gotten behind, and they were like, so they were bringing in new artists to kind of pay artists behind. And then anyway, so point being, all of all of obviously my biggest fans, I mean, the people that already know you and like care about your work, gave quite a bit of money, quite a bit of their money to the project, and I had zero of it. I was really the rage. I still have a bit of rage about that in me. I mean, I have to let it go because everything's dissolved. It's all gone. Ancient history, basically, might as well be. But so then I was left to figure it out on my own. And I mean, I'll say the beauty of it is that I had friends come out of the woodwork that played for basically nothing, and a friend that worked for basically nothing. I still owe him a little bit, but he's like super chill about like everything. And he did a fantastic job. And anyway, I got all this like support that came in, and the record got made eventually. And then I released it during the pandemic. So it's what it is.
Right.
It's like stillborn. It's like, but it still exists out there, you know, and it'll stay there until the electricity goes off.
Right. Well, I love my block print.
Oh, did you? Oh, good. You got it. Oh, did you? Yeah, that's right. Thanks for your support, buddy.
For sure. For sure. Well, I really liked, you know, I think I picked up one of your t-shirts when you came through town, and you were like, you know, I made I made the art. I was like, oh, you know.
Oh, yeah, I make everything.
You make everything.
Everything that I sell. I don't feel right about like selling like beer koozies and shit.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that'd be.
Well, I guess I didn't make t-shirts, but you know what I mean. Make the artwork on it. Yeah, but yeah, I try to limit the amount of like garbage that I produce with my name on it. Like I just don't feel good about it. That's back to like the thing. Everybody says, why don't you have t-shirts? And I'm like, well, or why don't you have this or that? Or, oh, you should get play. I'm like, God, man, it's just like more fucking landfill. You know what I mean? Like in my view, you know,
sure.
I mean, even the records are that ultimately, but at least they get used longer, I think. You know?
Right.
Boy, isn't that inspiring?
I mean, it's inspiring. You know, it's inspiring to be a better person that produces and consumes less garbage. Sure.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm all about. I'm all about that. So figuring out how, like, I would love it if, like, I made my entire living from playing music. I'd have to travel a bit. I mean, I have had to. Maybe I wouldn't though, because right now I don't, for instance. But like, as far as like limiting your like carbon footprint, you know, like
right.
it just you get paid for the living act, and the living act goes away, and it's about an experience. I mean, that is the true joy of music. Fundamental. I mean, indeed, you know, isn't it? You know, like so. But I do love records. I mean, I enjoy the art form of making them. Although I still think that the living experience is better than the recorded experience.
Of course.
Most.
Of course, you're making me think, you know, I always wish that I had gone to the Midnight Ramble.
Me too.
And I just always thought that I would have time to go. And then he passed away, and I guess they're still having it, but, you know, it's not the same.
I would imagine not. Yeah. I got to see him one time. We did a show with him in Virginia somewhere.
Oh, nice.
It was great.
I bet.
I mean, it was just great it's been good to meet so many heroes. Like when I think about that part of that journey was fucking what it was more than anything. Because I thought about what do you gain from, you know, meeting someone that is an absolute stranger that just touched you in some way, and you have, you know, you're not going to be friends. You know, it's not. I mean, you might, but like the odds are pretty much 1 billion to 1. You know that. So, and for me, in thinking about it, what was really beautiful about it is it humanized the myth. You know, like so when you meet, it's like, oh wow, yeah, you see the flesh and bone, you know what I mean, and the, you know, the sunspots and the whole thing. You're like, fuck yeah, man, you know, like it deepens it in a lot of ways. It's but it also makes it seem not feel so distant, you know.
Right.
Like, I mean, the time that we came up at our age and the way that we are, a lot of our, you know, some of our heroes, like, I mean, and even, I guess this could be for kids today still too, but, you know, it's like black and white photographs with like, you know, different kinds of cars. I mean, everything seemed like a whole another universe away. You know what I mean? Like when
Right.
you looked at the real like impactful moments that you worshipped as a kid. Like, I mean, I didn't see an old picture of Bob Dylan until you know what I mean. It was like
Mhm.
it was all just like record covers when he was young, you know, like and all the books I would read were written in the '60s or '70s, or you know, and they and then seeing the old man. I mean, looking sharp as hell. And but anyway, it's like it's cool. There's something really beautiful about that. Like,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it would have been, what would Jerry Garcia's Twitter feed been like?
I'm
You know what
glad
I
we
mean?
don't.
If that sort of thing existed, it was, you know, these people were mythic. And yeah, I guess it's super cool. You get to like hang out a little bit with Levon.
Do you? Yeah. It's just the way that I felt like even when I was a kid, like, I mean, you know, because those are the famous people, but there's all those famous people in your mind, all people in your life, you know, like the ones who really touched you, like where, you know, and like for me, like all the characters in New Orleans that are like so much larger than life, and half of them are dead. None of them like they died before. You could Google them right now and you won't find, you know, anything on half of them, you know what I mean?
Right.
But they were massive to me. They were like, oh my God, you know what I mean? Like instrumental. And like, I always felt like there's an osmosis of sorts. Even, I mean, that I think can even come from the briefest of encounters with people who are, you know, with people within their own, how do I put it? Damn it. But I feel like my draw to those people, I mean, I think that's most people's draw to any people is like, is a certain element to the energy that they have, right? And who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like standing in the presence of those things, you absorb information outside of, you know, language. Like
It's transrational. There's a
describe that
transmission.
word.
What's that?
There's a transmission that happens, and it's it's powerful, and it's not spoken, and it's something about being in the presence of, you know, of an energy that's speaking to you. You follow me?
I follow you. And then it's almost like it's a little bit of grace or a blessing. Like if you can get a laugh out of those people or something like that, you can just, you know, like have like a meaningful connection for like a second.
Yeah,
You
it's
know?
like getting father's approval, mother's approval, you know.
Well, it's also
like,
nice to feel like you can give back in a certain way.
Oh, that too. Yes, of course. Right. Yeah.
You know,
But it's like an acceptance, like giving back, but it's also like there is a being acknowledged by. Yeah, it's an interesting thing that this is part of like our social animal thing, like the way that we are as creatures, like just the power of that, like how much like social interaction. I mean, especially, I mean, really feeling it now, like, because as we're all fucking isolated, I'm really starting to think deeper and understand more just how important everybody, like, as much as I'll be like, oh, sometimes I'll just be like, fuck people, you know. I mean, it's easy to do, especially when I was living in LA. I mean, it's like pretty constant, surrounded by it, but I'm like, but like now it's like, I mean, there's days where I'm like, God, if somebody could just pat me on the back, you know, this is the softest touch or interaction can be so you know, is like so like the thirst for it is so great, and how much it sort of, I guess you don't have to identify. I don't know, at least for me anyway, I'm very social, and I realize now, although I can also isolate myself, in the thread. We're just running on. We can go on forever.
We could go on. We could go on forever. We could call it too, you know, and have you back another time. You know,
yeah, sure, man. Yeah.
We got 90 minutes in. It's a pretty good run.
Oh, we did? Oh, nice. Oh, we got 5 more to 90. Let's go. Or let's close it up with something good. What do you got?
You're going to tell us a story about, maybe, you got any stories about getting high with a famous person?
I don't know that I do. Oh yeah, Kesey, man. You were there, weren't you?
I might have been.
That was it was like New Year's 1999 or 98
Y2K.
or something. It was Y2K. Was that it?
Yeah, Y2K
It was at
Kesey's, King Kesey's.
No, but it was some ballroom in the middle of town, and we all painted all our shit day glow, and I remember I had a bicycle in there. Somebody did. I gave him a guitar that night, which Sandberry reminded me, which I had forgotten because I was like, where? My buddy Felix gave me a guitar, or I bought it off him, and I loved that guitar. And I was like, what happened to that guitar? I could not find it. Gave it to Ken Kesey. I painted it. And I remembered after Sam said it, and I remember giving it to him, and he was like, I don't even play this, you know. He's like, what the fuck, you weirdo? I'm probably, you got this fucking ugly spray painted guitar. What the fuck you want? But I was like, no, I want you to have it, man. And he took it, and we tripped that night. And we were all on stage, just like spazzing out, like for the new year. It was fun. It was really good. And that was the first time I'd never heard of the tradition of like kissing on New Year's Eve. And some beautiful girl just grabbed me and started kissing me right at the stroke of midnight. Never happened again. Like I was like, it was a good night. Really enjoyed it.
Right on.
I don't know. How's that for a story? It doesn't go. We just spazzed out. I think Ken Babb was but that goes back to, again, like standing in the rooms with those people,
right.
Was something. Like it does. You know, it's hard to even say what it is because, well, like you said, what was the word you used? What?
Transmission?
No, I used another word.
Transrational.
What does that mean?
Well, like beyond, like transcending the rational mind. Like there's not, a conceptual. Yeah. It doesn't fit inside a conceptual structure.
Yeah, that's sort of what I found to be the experience in those things. And well, part of, if I was to go rational with it, as much as I can do, I would say that it's back to, all of it comes back to sort of like what we started with, where it puts fractures in the view, so I have my ideas. I have, like let's say with Kesey, I've read his books, saw the movies, read interviews, read people like writing about him in articles or whatever, and then you meet the character, and that puts a fracture in it. And especially if they're not, and that can go in many ways. I mean, if they're an overly egotistical, hung up on themselves like type person, it can be a really awful experience. If they understand that this is all a game and it's just kind of like, it's a joke and life is, then that can be, that can really help elevate things for you in the way where it breaks down certain myths that, stand in your way from like getting like a greater point out of it. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And it reminds me of the word in yoga philosophy, they have the word darshan. And darshan is often when you go up to see a spiritual master, or you go sometimes even just to see a statue, of a deity. And it means to see, right? So, there's a big, coming back to presence, there's this real sense of the seer and the seen, right? That we have this kind of witness consciousness that perceives things. That witness consciousness is sort of our little drop of the divine, right? The ocean of the divine, in us as a witness. And when we see like the guru or the teacher or these special people, then we're that part of us sees that part of them, right? That there's this sort of meeting of consciousness, and then that starts to proliferate and we get a bigger sense of who we are in the world.
Yeah, we sort of see, I understand. I think.
Yeah, I mean, I also only think I understand.
Today about like people like touching, what's that?
I also only think I understand.
Oh, I know. That's the whole thing for me. Like, this is the reason that I'm glad that we're doing this, but the thing that always makes me nervous about this is like, I know that I don't really know Jack. Like, I just, but I mean, I've got, it's all theories, ideas, feelings. I do like, I think my favorite bit of our talk was when we were talking about surrender, because that's something I've really been focusing on. And I feel like that was maybe the truest thing that I think I'll stand behind that forever. But,
Right.
I was thinking the other day about, I haven't read the Bible. I grew up in a religious family, but I didn't leave the family, but the view. But there's a story about like, people like just say wanting to like touch the cloth of Jesus, when he'd walk by,
Right.
I was trying to remember that story. I guess I could look it up. I do have the internet in front of me, and I was thinking about that because what we're talking about right now, where you're like, oh, have you ever gotten high with a famous person? I was thinking about fame in general, because I mean, Jesus would have been famous. I mean, for that, they'd be like, oh my God, this guy walks on fucking water. That's a big deal, or whatever the story was. I personally don't subscribe to Christianity. I'm not in any way pushing it, like advocating. Anyway, I was thinking about like. Anyway, I'll get back to you. The next time I'll have thought this through a little bit more. But what I've been like wondering about is what is it, like what I've wondered is what is it that puts a person off balance when they come into touch with something that they feel like, and here in today's age, I guess you call it celebrity or fame or something, but like somebody walks into a room, the room changes. Everybody has this certain feeling. What is that? Like, what is it? Like, I mean, you really can't, it's a many-headed beast and there's no way to really know, but what does anyone think that what is that experience? I've just wondered that because I've seen it a lot. I've also, of course, felt it. But like, I don't have a handle on what it is in us that like reacts that way. Like really, we could say like, oh, it's because, touched by the work. Sure. That's one element. You follow me?
I follow you, and I don't have an answer either. And
like, what puts the person off their balance because another person enters a room because they saw them on a silver screen, or they heard a record, or read a book, or like what is it that throws the equilibrium of where they might start acting like irrational or feel there's just this swell of things, and you're talking about a stranger here. So what is it about the touching of the mind that can alter a person's presence, or like a room so significantly?
Well, because there's emotion and energy and projection, right? We conceptualize the person. We appreciate, we felt different emotions that we don't ordinarily have access to. So we and then we also have these complexes of, like you said, wanting to be accepted and wanting to be seen and wanting to be approved of. Yeah. And there's all of that stuff gets wrapped up with an enormous amount of energy. It's like, even, think about the amount of energy that can go into going to a concert, the time and the expense and the outlay of, making sure you get there and making sure you have a good night. And it's all sort of around this performance that makes us feel things that we don't have an opportunity to feel in our regular life, perhaps. And that person's in the middle of it.
And it's like, it's a sense of, right.
So, it's like, how do we create enough gravity in our own self to stay centered? How do we be good enough? How do we become enough so that when faced with somebody who's great, we're still in our enoughness?
Yeah, I guess that's what that's sort of a point where how one person, or I've seen people who I think are like absolutely fantastic, fabulous people, suddenly feel small standing next to someone that they think is like fabulous and fantastic. Do you know what I mean? And that's the thing that I've always been lost on that weird voodoo that happens in. I would love to see the death of celebrity entirely, personally. I just feel like it's like with all that I've seen in the realms of it, I think it's, I don't know, but I don't think it'll ever happen. I mean, you know, we still know like people. I mean, you know, as long as we've been recording history, like there's the, you know, most of them are rulers, but like it's you know, there's a lot of illusion there that I feel like needs to be dispelled, and that's why I say when encountered, when the spell is broken, there's a power in the breaking of the spell for the person, for your own growth. You know, like if you were growing up in America where we you know I mean, worship magazine characters and all these types of things, like,
well, there is
dead. I don't know what I'm talking.
You know, there can be something fun is, you know, again, one of the things about, you know, plant medicine is that we kind of change in size. You know, sometimes we get small, you know, it's like we see the ineffability of the universe, how huge and enormous things are. And, you know, the amount of energy that goes into being able to manage a room of thousands of people, you know, is a lot of energy, and to sort of kind of appreciate it from a place of being a little bit thrown off center can be cool. Like there's something sort of magical about, are we being thrown off center, or are we recentering? We're sort of
that's a very, all right, I like it, man. I like what you're saying. Yeah, okay, yeah, thanks, man. That's a good, I like that.
We're recentering in the
because I mean, that's another, back to like who knows what. Like, because definitely like I'll feel centered, and then I mean I don't actually know.
It's making me think of like the stories of like the fairy circles, you know, where people would wander off into the woods and they'd fall asleep in like, you know, a circle of flowers or something, and wake up in like a fairy kingdom where like everything was like wild and magical and different and strange, and then they wake up again, and then it's all gone. It's a fleeting, it's this fleeting glimpse of something wholly other.
That's an interesting take on the psychedelic experience in ways too. Yeah. Do you know?
Right. Yeah. Which then brings us back to this longing, right? It's like, and then we have to like figure out how to live with the longing. And how does that longing inspire us to be different or better or stranger?
Good question.
Good question. Too bad we had to wait.
That's a good.
We had to wait 90 minutes to get to this. This is a fun spot.
Oh, keep going. Keep going. I mean, I'm not going anywhere. Okay. I don't know if anybody will watch this far in, but I'll keep going.
Right. Well, I think there's 16 people still watching. I think we.
Oh, people are watching this now.
Oh yeah, we're live, man. Did I not tell you that?
Oh no. Okay, I got you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we maxed out close to 50, but yeah, we got 17 people just sending you so much love right now, wishing they could pat you on the back, shake your hand, and give you a big hug.
It's not that desperate, but it has been a profound feeling. Like, I would say I am, like, you know, never missed an opportunity to be here. That sounds dumb as fuck, but like, just like, it's been, I've actually kind of thrived in a lot of ways during this time. What am I talking about? Yeah, in like lots of ways. Like, it's been, I feel like the spell, being back to breaking spells, but like sort of the spell of just daily life. I mean, it's hard to, we couldn't have pictured like where we're sitting right now. I'm on a Zoom talking to you. The whole scene is like, do you follow me?
Yeah, the whole scene is pretty strange. And I am grateful. I do want to give a shout out to Brian. I don't think I've even done that. I'm so ungrateful. Like, we're doing this because Brian asked me to. Brian runs Deadhead Land. And so he's been an amazing hub and support for musicians. You know, he just sort of went with it. He's been been streaming live shows for a while in the neighborhood, like around the Bay Area. Musicians just sort of let Brian set his camera up and stream live, and it's been cool. And now he's sort of the club owner. Did I lose you?
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, he's the club, and he just books shows daily, and gives musicians kind of a place to congregate. And it's been really nice. It's like really nice to kind of check in and be like, oh, it's like, I recognize that guy. He plays bass, in that band, but there he is by himself doing his thing. And
yeah, it's all moved so fast, hasn't it? Or like where there's this whole, like this, like what you're talking about, this type of connection arising out of like what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty cool.
And I really did.
I mean, it's amazing.
What's amazing?
Just that we have this ability. If this was going on like 30 years ago, we'd all just be, I don't know, sitting in the house. I mean, and that's fine too. But like this is, I do love, like my favorite was like 3 days ago. Michael Hurley played from his house in like Astoria, Oregon, or wherever he lives, and there he is, just sitting there, and he's just playing through his songs. He would never do that. I would never. I mean, he's like, and he's probably, I think he's over 80 or he's pushing 80,
mm-hmm.
And I get to sit here and I get to watch him in real time, and like that's just it's a pleasure. It's interesting. I mean, having this these like electric windows to like,
right,
just all of a sudden you're in some microcosm somewhere else.
Yeah, we certainly are well prepared for this pandemic. I really thought, it was going to be different. I thought all the lights were going to go out. I thought it was going to be sort of riots in the streets, and just like, the downfall of civilization was going to be wilder and more violent.
Well, this isn't it yet, bud.
And this
is like the first trip to the hospital.
Right.
Like this is like not, because this is like, hopefully it's not like well, it's going to go unheeded. Like for me, the total optimist in me is that this is going to wake people up. I don't think so. I mean, it's like the smoker who's like, oh shit, and he's afraid he's going to die, so he starts chain smoking even more than he did. And that's my concern of what the direction we might go out of this.
Right.
The ideal would be oh my God, you have a minor heart attack, and you're like, okay, got to make some changes. You know what I mean? Got to start. That'd be the ideal. Like as a species. But
But we're not that smart.
All the wrong people are in power everywhere. So it's going to take a little longer, I think. I'm still nervous is my point.
Yeah.
But I'm also like,
well, it's interesting watching people, the capitalist trance, talking about the spell, the spell of capitalism is so ingrained in us, that people, want to march in the streets to fight for their right to endanger their lives for minimum wage so that other people can get wealthy, instead of marching in the streets to ask for universal basic income.
Totally. Or to like, protect the planet, or any number of things. It was amazing to see. Well, it's you don't see a lot. Well, you do see some protests from the right, which would mostly be like an anti-abortion rally or something like that. But yeah, seeing guys with AR-15s on the steps of courthouses because they want to go get haircuts is amazing. Like, or it's not, they're like, I want to go back to work. It's like, I mean, you will eventually. Like, it's not, this. We're not going to just be sitting in our houses forever.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the fact mobilize. It's like bizarro world. We're living in like a really weird time. In my mind, I mean, from what I'm seeing anyway. I mean, the funny thing is, this is why I really feel like I should shut the world out while I have the people that I'm staying with out here. We're near Sequoia, near Three Rivers. You know it.
Where are you?
I'm in near three out in the woods near Three Rivers, California, by Sequoia National Park.
Okay, Cool.
You
Yeah,
know,
I'm not too much, but sure.
well, let's put it this way: like, I'm not going to encounter anybody unless I go to town. So I don't know why I keep plugging in. I mean, the people here keep saying, like, you know what? It's like, you know, I mean, if the world burns, it's not like there's anything you can do about it from here. You might as well just relax and get yourself, you know, just you know, go hang with the trees, like, have a nice time. But anyway, I keep plugging in, and like, it's like, and I go across the spectrum of medias. I've gotten to where it's sort of like monitoring society. So I mean, I won't watch Fox News, but I'll dip into all the pools of like where all the information that's being fed to everybody is like coming from. And
one of my favorite phrases. So one of the things I try and do to temper my news watching is something that I think it's a Taoist phrase, and what they say is, "Don't mind the times, mind the eternities."
Elaborate.
Well,
or don't.
Mind the times. You know, there's like we're living in a time, and things are happening, and sometimes they're better, and sometimes they're worse, and sometimes they're strange, and sometimes they're boring, but they keep changing, and you know that wheel keeps spinning. Behind all of that, there's some sort of eternity that's going on that is sort of essential about us and about, you know, our place in the world. And of course we can't really know what's happening. We don't know what's going on, of course, but we can still plug into that and spend more time there. And that's kind of what's important.
I like that. It's like the waves on the surface and then like the ocean.
Yes.
Like, so getting hung up on the like surface and which is easy to do. I mean, it's just easy. It's
glamorous.
I mean, especially that it's really tempting in isolation. I mean, well, it's so to say. I mean, I've been reading and I've been playing a lot of music and things, but there's I don't know where my need for like needing to know what's going on outside of where I am. You know, or why that, I don't know why I like will get up in the morning and like see what's happening. Like, I feel like I need to tune out. Sorry, that's just personal, blah, blah, blah. But
right. So again, I want to encourage people to check you out. Listen to your music.
Oh yeah, go listen to the music. It's on all the things you listen to music.
Right on. And support your Patreon, support the Tam Integration Patreon. Support the Deadhead Land Patreon. Just click all the buttons there.
Do it.
Do it. Thank you so much for being here. It's always like great to check in with you. You know.
Oh, good, man. Yeah, but I hope that you you know, take care.
I hope the same for you.
Thanks, man.
All right. Be well. Thank you, everybody, for checking in and listening. This has been Instrumental Breakthroughs. I'm Daniel. And we've been here with Gill Landry.
Thanks, Daniel.
Thanks, Gill.
Anyway, yeah, that sounds nice. Let's do that. That's good. In my mind, I see you there with your raven eyes and your coal black hair. Down Chapatula Street on your balcony, and he come back home to me. I came down from Montclair and met the devil. He asked me the way back home. Got down on all fours, I said mine or yours, and he come back home to me. I love heard the song you sang and heard your banjo ring 1,000 times or more from underneath the cellar door of your mama's store. And he come back